Hello, my name is Peter Head. I'm a director of Arup. I've just visited 25 countries to talk about, in detail, about what this low-carbon growth model would mean. And everywhere I have been, I can see that the falling away of gas and oil supplies is driving a very satisfactory change of technology, particularly for transport. But the elephant in the room, to use that expression, in every country I've been to, is what we do about coal-fired power generation. Now, it seems to me that 150 countries that are sitting negotiating all know that this is the elephant in the room, and those countries fund the European Investment Bank, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, who do projects, but those banks find it difficult to invest in emerging technology. Is it not possible for you in governments around the world to get together and say, let's create a fund to sort out what we're going to do about coal-fired power generation, and possibly the more inventive ideas of taking the carbon and trying to sequester it back into agriculture? And there are technologies for that. Because it seems to me if that could happen in the next year or so, and we could be more confident about some of those ideas, then I feel the negotiations could be much smoother. So is that sort of model possible?
I think you're absolutely right, Peter. This is the issue. It's the issue for China. It's the issue for almost everywhere. So, who wants to take on this question?
I know something about the CCS, the carbon capture and storage. I guess you mean that? No, it's
CCS, but then the broader issue of just stopping new coal-fired power plants.
No, I'm talking about sequestration. So I'm talking about other technologies to actually take the carbon and store it back into soils and into materials, which actually for me there are many technologies which are embryonic, which may have a lot more opportunity to solve the problem than the idea of just pumping carbon dioxide in liquid form underground, which I think many people are still concerned, because every power station in the world doesn't have that opportunity locally.
Now I understand. I did visit to a company near Beijing. The name is ENN, Company for New Energy. They got some experts, some scientists to test the technology to use the CO2 to develop the algae and use the algae to make some oil, oil that is very good quality, even better than the olive oil. And then they also use that to produce the diesel. And they also designed a park, industrial park level regional energy solution. So it's a revolution, a radical change from the current, the power company sells you the electricity to your home. And they change that. The small region can solve their own their energy problem. Of course, they need the grid power, but they can also use their solar power and use the CO2 to make those kind of energies. I guess they are talking about that, but they need still need some testify about their result, their products.
Very briefly, and sort of in the hope that Christine will allow us to have a few extra minutes beyond the four. Because I think that was a very key question that you asked, Peter. I mean, first of all, totally agree that coal is the elephant in the room, just because of the extent to which new coal-fired power generation capacity is locking you into a high carbon pathway. Annual emissions are not the issue in this. Lock-in of future emissions are the issue, and coal is the biggest part of that problem. So unless you have a coal strategy, you don't have a climate strategy. It's as simple as that. You can do all the other stuff you want to do, but it's not going to be enough to deal with the problem. My personal view, we can debate it offline, is that actually the front end of that coal strategy is about conventional CCS. It's about accelerating the deployment of conventional CCS while at the same time broadening the range of options for sequestration. But the point I want to make actually is a different one. It's, in a sense, we have to be very careful not to get trapped into a domain of thinking which is not where the real solution pathway lies. You can build lots of sort of constructs in the world of technology that will get you from a high carbon world to a low carbon world very quickly. We know a lot about the technology landscape. We know a lot about the options. You can devise pathways. But actually, that's not the world where the real pathways need to be built. The world where the real pathways need to be built is in the world of politics, as I said. And the point there is that there's no point in having a solution which will work technologically to a problem which body politics do not yet own as a problem. You say that the negotiators all understand the importance of coal. There are people in the governments that the negotiators come from who understand the importance of coal. You'd be amazed how many people in the climate negotiations who are sitting there behind their national flags don't have the same level of understanding that your question reflects about the importance of coal. And governments, it often amuses me as someone who's worked inside governments on and off for the last 30 years, people get the impression that governments ought to behave in a sort of coherent way, as if there were a single brain directing the choices that that the governments were making in all the different areas of policy that it makes choices. And we all know that that's not that model, that idea of how governments work is not an accurate one. Governments encompass a kind of seething ferment of contending forces, and sometimes some dominate and sometimes others dominate, and sometimes some are in charge in one sector and others are in charge in another. It's and the key to this issue is understanding that, which isn't about technology. I get very annoyed when people make clumsy statements, careless statements about what's possible and what's not possible, because I think you need to distinguish between what is possible in a kind of engineering and technology sense, which is not difficult to understand, actually, and what's possible in a political sense. And that's much harder to understand. It's much more of an art than a science. And most of the people who are making statements about what's possible in a political sense are making them because they want to draw you to a particular conclusion for their political purposes. They are not making those statements from a point of detachment. In a sort of truly scientific way, it seems to me. So I'm trying to give a flavour that landscape is actually quite a complicated and difficult one, while agreeing with you on the importance of coal.
Good. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it at that. I think you have both brought out some very interesting and provocative points. I actually, surprisingly, find myself feeling more hopeful after this session, because I've been quite depressed at the international negotiating situation. But I think both of you have sketched out the importance of political consensus, but also the degree to which both of your countries have moved very, very far. And I think it's particularly impressive to see how quickly China has moved and continues to move. And I think we'll be watching the new 5-year plan with particular interest. So I hope that all of you can join me in thanking our panelists for a very good session. Thanks.